Hi, everyone. It's the next episode of the Fork in the Road podcast, and I'm so thrilled to have Shun Foreman with me today. I did meet her when I was doing the sugar addiction training with Bit and Johnson, but we haven't had much chance to really get to know each other. So I know this is just going to be so interesting for me and everybody. So Shun's passion is to bring sugar awareness to communities of colour through understanding how historical and present day injuries impact on health, by helping women understand how too much sugar relates to metabolic syndrome, they can improve their health and their communities. Whilst knowing that sugar addiction is real, but that not everyone can live sugar free, she uses history and health to motivate people to make the best food choices. She's a nurse with a master's degree in human rights and social justice, which is amazing. I bet that was amazing to do. With a license in holistic addiction medicine, and as I said, trained certified to do sugar assessments by Bit and Johnson, and that's how we met. So, hi, Shun, you're so welcome.
Jen.
It's
Hey.
lovely to talk to you.
Ew.
Yeah, so in the spirit of not knowing that much about you, and also that a lot of people in this field have their own story with sugar, uh, I wondered if that applied to you, and if if you're willing to share anything about that, if that is true for you, what your own story was with sugar, and maybe how it started, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd love to share. The weird thing is I feel like I'm an addict by default. I didn't even know I was an addict until I started, really looking into the history. So, and that kind of, I like to say I'm kind of working my way backwards to tell you the story of how I ended up to where I am today.
Yeah.
So I I've just been passionate about caring for people all of my life. Um, and that really has a lot to do, I think, with my mom and just the work that she did in the community at the time. It was not like a real job or anything, but she shared a lot of her off time with
Mm.
just taking care of people in the community, especially our relatives that were older, and then also just taking care of just people maybe down the street or around the corner, and
Wow.
preparing meals and stuff like that. So with me being the only daughter, of course I would always do these tag along trips with my
Yeah.
mom,
Go out with her.
right. And so the weird thing is, at that time as a young girl, I really was thinking more that these were like field trips. I wasn't aware that these were that my mom was actually doing work. But long story short, I ended
Yeah.
up sort of developing and understanding that there was a need to take care of people. Really, I mean, probably by the age of 5 or 6, I understood that people in the community needed help, and at that time I was just thinking like, oh, they're my relatives. But now I see it as a larger thing because, of course, I ended up being a nurse. But the other thing is like when just being a child, and my brothers were 2 years and then 5, 7 years older than me. They
Yeah.
kind of had their own world, and I had to make my own world. But I spent much of my time like just really teaching, yeah, teaching to my imaginary students who were my dolls. So, and I really enjoyed it. I can't express to you how much I really just enjoyed really thinking that I was a real teacher at that time.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
really thought that, that me taking care of my students was a part of, just being a good teacher, because that's what I'd seen modeled in front of me were really good teachers who were the extension of our families and our moms in our schools at that time.
Yeah.
So, putting all of that, the teaching and education together, I do recall the day that one of my students became, to me in my brain, she was sick. And so I just took the time to take care of her as just the same way I'd seen the nurses take care of patients in the hospital. So I used that opportunity to really just start my very first IV by just making the things at home. I used the needle and thread and used, Ziploc bag and filled it halfway with water and then pinned it up to the bedpost. And I
Mhm.
really began to take care of a patient, so in those worlds, the world of educating and then in the world of really just taking care of people have really manifested. Now I see it as a 22-year of nursing experience. Um, I'll say about 20, probably about the time it's about 15 years or so of nursing, I really had begun to understand that there was a connection between disparities, health disparities, and sort of even the way I thought about things. Because when I looked at the majority of the patients that were of color that I had a chance to take care of, they looked just like me. They were coming in with what I'd like to say is now I know it is metabolic syndrome, but
Yeah.
wasn't uncommon to see blacks with hypertension. Wasn't uncommon to see diabetes and then obesity, of course.
Mm.
But not really understanding that that had a connection to sugar until I started to work on a thesis in human rights and social justice. That I really understand that there was a connection to the history portion of it.
Mm.
And so I began to do my thesis, and what I really was fascinated by was just the history and just saying, oh my gosh, like I had never thought about, uh, the experience of being an African American as one related to sugar. I mean, I don't know much about my own personal history and how far we go back as to say what my ancestors have committed their work in. But after I learned that there was of the uh, of the 12 million or so Africans that were made that became enslaved, 70% of them were committed to sugar colonies. And
Wow.
so that blew my mind. It
I
literally blew
I
my
think
mind.
that's just not known, is it? Or it's not, or, maybe if we really thought about it, that would make sense, but it's not something that we do think about. So, yeah.
Right. And it's not something that, even if it were a question on a history test, I mean, like I don't recall anything, I recall learning about the triangle, right? But not really so much about sugar.
Mm.
Like I said, I really thought about cotton. And so I really just began to dig a little bit deeper and just try to understand more about sugar and like what is going on with my history as it relates to sugar. And so honestly, it feels like now when I think back, it's like the universe really sort of, or either I became obsessed with the topic. I probably should say that. I sort of just started thinking about every time I heard the word sugar, it was related to something because, like, even at the time that I had begun to work on a thesis, I was in Sugar Land, Texas. you know, and my husband's like, I wonder why is this Sugar Land, Texas? And I'm like, babe, you have to know why this is Sugar Land, Texas. And so, of course, it's a strong connection, right? It used to be a plantation. It used to be the beginning of imperial sugar, and and then just kind of digging a little bit deeper and learning more. While I was there, there was 95 bodies that were being exhumed at the time when they were trying to work on expanding a expanding the school district. So they found 95 bodies from the time that they had been doing convict leasing, which those were 95 Black bodies during the time post Reconstruction. So I think, when we go back to the education piece and why I'm so passionate about it is because I like to say I worked hard as a student in a classroom, but I was not like the brightest kid. I just had to work very hard. But part of me learning was this desire and need to touch and see and feel things. So I went back and I had an opportunity to talk to the local historian and just learn more about the Sugarland 95. And of course, that's a story that I learned from the historian that it really was the work that he was doing, that the history was there, but it was just like the history wasn't told. And
Mm,
so I began to really relate to how much has been unearthed, or untold, and
mm,
that he really, and I'm saying he as in Reginald Moore, at that time, he imparted knowledge in me and just made me think that I had a responsibility also to tell stories, and to learn as much about the history as I can.
mm,
And so taking that, and then also knowing that I'm a touchy-feely type learner, um, I submitted a proposal to see if the school would support me in going to do some sugar plantation tours, and they did. And so
oh,
I was
wow.
there, and Jen, there's, you know, I, you just have to be there. You just have to actually go through a couple of sugar plantation tours to understand that, for one, not much of the narrative is told about the African American experience. Kind of almost have to raise your hand and say, hey, what about? There are a couple of plantations there that do bring out the narrative and make it very strong, but you walk away with the sense that it's really clearly about the master's narrative.
Mm,
So, and that was a part of me. I would like to say that that was the spark of my behavioral changes as it relates to me taking in sugar. And really, I just sort of developed this way to sort of change my diet and just think, I just don't want that. I don't want sugar. If it had the word sugar in it, I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm just not. I'm not going to eat it.
it's
And so,
such a interesting and unique story about so fork in the road, as you know, is the name of the book, and the website. It's this idea of like, what was it for you that kind of started that journey of doing something different around sugar? And for you, it's just such a fantastic and powerful and sort of unique story. It wasn't almost something about you. It was about something bigger, and about sugar being something about not just enslaving us as individuals, but enslaving people. Um, I think that's just so brilliant.
yeah, you're so right, Jen. I think of course, you and I met during Bidden's course, and that was a different type of awakening, because honestly, I just had never thought about sugar just beyond sugar. I was thinking about uh, really, I would say I was just thinking about just sugar. I wasn't thinking about bread. I never thought about the whole conversion, the carbs. And I did learn a couple of things in nutrition, but I just never thought about those pieces. And of course, when we, the first lecture in Bitten's course, we talk about addiction. And I'm like, what? Enslavement, edicere, adicole, this comes from a Latin word.
It comes
And of course,
from, yeah. I don't think,
right.
maybe not everyone listening knows that. So the word addiction is from a Latin root for enslavement. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So this, just learning a little bit more that, man, this sugar thing was just really connected to more than just my history. Then it really made me understand that it was connected to my health, because, of course, in Bitten's course, I began to understand that it was the sugar that made me overeat, and the sugar that was putting me at the overweight, in the overweight category.
Mm,
So, and then too, I think just being African American, I really just hadn't really thought about just the fact that I kind of just thought I was destined to have, certain types of diseases, until I was talking to my uncle one day, and we were just talking about health, and I asked a couple of my aunts and uncles about their health, and pretty much all of them had either high blood pressure, diabetes, and were overweight. And so my uncle turned the question on me and asked me, "What about me?" And I was just like, at that time, honestly, I was borderline everything. I was actually obese at that point, and but yeah, it was borderline everything. My numbers were just you felt like it was just one more doctor's appointment, and then they were going to tell you, yeah, you're diabetic, you need to start taking medication, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's when I think the learning became sort of a little bit more difficult, because then it became a responsibility, to say that if I know that this is that sugar is connected to the development of obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, and cholesterol issues, then it's my responsibility as a person who cares about other people, and especially those in vulnerable communities. It's my responsibility to do something with that.
Mm.
Because I had already made the changes in my with my husband and myself. We had made those changes together. Now the next step is making the changes with the kids, which I don't know if you know, but that's a struggle within itself.
Yeah.
But
I,
at least,
that's actually one of my later questions is like how, what are some of the special issues of trying to work with families and families with kids, particularly because that comes up a lot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a big thing, because I can't believe, now that I think about it, sugar is just such, we tie it into so much, about love and family and experiences, it's just in everything. So, but yeah, I think, knowing that when my husband and we made the changes, that I dropped like 54 pounds, my husband dropped like 84 pounds. I and then of course, when you go back to the doctor's office, you're like, yes, I
Yeah.
want to see, I'm ready for this doctor's
Check me
appointment.
out.
Yeah, draw my blood,
Yeah.
So,
Hopping on the scales, no problem.
exactly. So
Yeah.
yes, I was excited, and of course the numbers showed, exactly what I wanted them to show, which was that I was taking care of myself better. So then I'm a believer, right? So in the sense that if it happened to me, then I can also share that experience, with other people. And so that's what the journey looked like for me,
Yeah.
was the fork in the road. I'd like to say it was kind of like two levels. One is just connecting it with my history, and then the other part was just connecting it with my health. And those, and I don't know, I think for me it works, because I don't want to say I was a dieter before, but I tried different things, and Weight Watchers and all that, and I just never was able to stick to it. But this has been the most consistent thing that I've ever done in my life,
Yeah.
besides stay married and be a mom,
Yeah.
and so it really does. But I think having that history piece to anchor my why really helps me. It really
Yeah.
helps me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's come together with, as you say, just this it's just in you to be a teacher and to care for people. So once you had the why, and then you had your own experience, and like you say, you can't unsee either of those things, can you? Once you've seen them, then it's obviously just in you then to take that knowledge and to try and help other people who are either
Yeah.
sugar addicts or just what we also call is sort of harmful users, just like you're not aware really, and you're not, it may not be at the level of an addiction, but it's just like you say, that everyday culture that we have now of how we eat, how we celebrate, how just how we kind of the food environment that we live in, that,
Yeah.
that's harming us basically. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So were there particular kind of resources or people that sort of helped you in terms of your own journey, and how you change what you eat, what you personally ate? Were there particular resources that you called upon, or did you just kind of was it something that you just sort of saw what worked for you and put it into practice? How did you and your husband um
Biden's list, it really is just that list of low carb, whole
just that
food. That's
food?
what I like to say.
Yeah.
And we just tried to, we cooked from that list. We bought groceries from that list.
Yeah.
And we didn't eat anything outside of that list, for a long time. And I want to say that that was the thing that it's kind of weird because you know, I think people kind of get afraid to say, well, we can't go out to eat anymore. No, you can actually eat from that list. If they don't have anything, at a place you're going to go to at a restaurant, then
Yeah.
I'm just not going to eat anything on that list. So, of course, so I'd like to say it started with Bitten's list,
Yeah.
of just getting me to understand like what should you put in your body. And especially because it just kind of started out as like a detox for us,
Yeah.
and then once we started to see the results, it was just like, no, we're on board.
We stay
Um,
excited with this. Yeah.
yeah. And so the other thing for me was just learning that it's not just sugar, right? It's the other things that can inflame your body that I didn't know about. There's no way I would have known about unless I had gone through a course, because that information is just not so open and free, right?
Yeah.
And then after Bitten's course, I went through Jen Edden's Sugar Freedom course, and that was a really good, because that, I think for me, that course taught me the importance of community, because I had never gone through like an Overeaters Anonymous or anything like that. I never experienced that. I didn't really know what that recovery world was.
Yeah.
What my husband and I, we just kind of say now, we were just cold turkey and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're fortunate that it worked out the way it did, but at the same time, I'm like all about community now. It's like
Yeah.
there's no way you could do this without community.
Without, but in a way it does make it so much better if you're doing it in your own, with the person that you live with and cook with. i
True.
I think it is really hard for people when one person's trying to do their best
Oh yeah.
and other people in the house, and that's how it applies to families as well, doesn't it? Yeah, so
Yeah.
for people that are listening, if they want to find Bitten's food list, the best thing to do is to go on the Sugar Bomb in Your Brain Facebook group, and it's in the files there. That's the quickest way to find that. And you can also look at the food list in Fork in the Road, which is very similar to Bitten's, and Bitten's in the book, obviously.
Mm.
Yeah, so those are the key things that help you. And yeah, I agree totally. Community. So that takes us on really to what your passion is now and your work is. Tell us about what you're doing and how's it going. And
Yeah, I am having so much. When work is fun and community work is fun, you're in the right thing. But so I was happy to be able to I was hoping to only have like 6 or 7 people in this small Facebook group. And the name of the group is called Sisters Breaking the Bonds of Sugar.
wow. Great.
So, and I started that in February, and well, I'll say officially started the Facebook group in February. Had a couple of people that were on board and did well. I was doing like a little bit of individual coaching on the side with them,
Hmm.
and so they were just like, yeah, let's do, open up a Facebook group. This is going to be great. And that first month, there was like 88 people. And like now we're up to, I think, about 439. So it's exciting because I get to keep my focus around the work of sugar awareness.
Mm.
Because to me, that's where a big deficit is in like when you go to your doctor's appointment. They'll tell you to um, eat less, exercise more.
Exercise more. Yeah. Yeah.
And you might see that little snippet that says something about avoid sugar, but you have no idea that high fructose corn syrup is very different from sugar, table sugar, right? Or why should I stay away from the artificial sweeteners? No, not many people know about that.
Yeah.
And so
Or they're staying away from sugar and they're eating like a bowl of pasta or a bowl of rice.
exactly, exactly. So I just really love to educate within that community and just keep it focused on, like, again, go back to history. We do delve into history and how does your experience as a person of color relate to the history of sugar, because pretty much you can just about go anywhere in the world and find that there's a connection to color of people and sugar. So, and so the group is open to women of color, and we just talk about history, and then we tie that back in. How does that relate to health? And I'm just trying to give them the same experience that worked for me, not so much sugar preaching like I wanted to do in the beginning, and it was not successful at all. I did the sugar preaching with my kids, and it just doesn't work. So I do enjoy just making connections and having that community in a space where I really didn't see it before, right? I didn't see communities of women of color talking about sugar specifically,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
just created it.
Fantastic. And how do people join? How do people sign up for the group?
Uh, so the best way is to friend me on Facebook, which is the Shun Foreman. And then, you can say, hey, I heard this story. I'd like to join the group. And then, or either they can send me an email through sugarmodeoff@gmail.com.
Okay.
So, so either one of those ways would be great. And, when you think about it, it is a global thing. So if the more
Yeah,
connections I can make around the world with people of color, I think it would be better.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And as you say, that community is such a big piece. I know that Bitten says it's 10% about the food and 90% about the rest. Yeah, so because the world we live in is so sugar saturated. I mean, it wouldn't be the case if that wasn't the case, would it? But
So true.
because sugar is everywhere, we have to have some models of people who are doing something different so that we can feel
Yeah.
part of a group. We don't feel like we're the one weirdo who's
Right.
who's not having dessert or who's not having cake on their birthday or who's not having.
Right. That's so true. It's a bowl of berries, right?
Yeah, yeah, if that. Yeah,
Yeah, right. If that, right. It's
yeah,
so true.
yeah,
That's so true. Yeah, but I just I think it's just so important that I was thinking the other day, I was like, I wonder why is there such a gap, like because the sugar awareness piece just doesn't seem to be something that's outstanding in healthcare to me.
mm, mm.
Uh, because we do smoking cessation, right? We do those types of
And
programs, but
alcohol,
alcohol, yeah.
drugs. There's treatment programs, aren't there? Yeah. So what answer do you come up with?
I just, I think it's just that we're, if it's just, when we're all kind of facing in the same type of hell, we're all eating junk food. You just it's difficult, to try to change things and motivate change. But I think when you stick around the language of awareness, that at least opens the doors up for so many more people. Addiction sort of closes the doors off for a lot of people when you use
Mhm.
that language.
Yeah.
Opening it up to awareness definitely leads you to the road of addiction. you know.
Correct. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so start gently with people, and they eventually come to their own conclusions and then make their own choices. Yeah, I
Right.
agree.
Yeah. So yeah, and you know about that because of your grandmodel. It has to start from a place of compassion.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you get stuck. You can't just tell people what not to eat. The other thing I think is that I find really helpful is using the American Heart Association guidelines. Those guidelines were set up. Actually, they discovered in 2009 that there was a limit. That women, children, and men needed to consume of sugar. And for women, of course, it's the 25 gram, women and children, 25 grams a day. And
mhm,
then for men, it's 36 grams daily. So that is another place where I think it's been helpful for me to be able to have some credible association that I can say, look,
yeah,
this is what they say. It's not just coming from me and just really looking at the world of addiction. It's coming from a place that hoards the information about people who've had heart attacks and strokes.
Yeah.
And if they've got those numbers, then they know the numbers as to why we should cut back on sugar. So I use that space, and I think that's just a very good way to let people, like, how do you think you're doing? What do you
L-
put it on mute? I'm sorry. What do you think you're taking in on a day-to-day basis? And a lot of people will look at that Dr. Pepper and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm blowing it right here."
They
And
don't know. Yeah,
yeah,
that's great. That educational piece about, well, this is what the guideline says. Did you know that, for a start? And then let's look at what you have and how it adds up. Yeah.
yeah, and I do love the idea of just knowing that I'm going to have a relationship with food every day of my life. So I feel good about talking about sugar every day of my life. You know, I think if it were something that I didn't want to talk about every day, it would be taxing, but it's actually rewarding to learn something new about sugar every day.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Yeah, I
it
could talk about it all day long. So
Yes, I know. Yeah, so yeah, but it's good. And then when you see the light bulb go off, with people, you're just like, yes, this is
yeah,
great. So
it's very nourishing for us.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So let's circle back round a little bit to families uh, and kids. So a lot of the women in your groups must be mums, I guess, or
Mhm.
even grandmas. I don't know. Uh, what kind of solutions do they find um, for helping their own families and loved ones to with this issue? It's really difficult. Like you say, you can't preach at people. They that tends to just make the whole situation worse. So I'm
Yeah.
just wondering either what your advice is or what solutions people have found to um, bring their families and their kids along with them to some extent.
Yeah. So far, well, let me just say that we're using the space also as a book club. So we're going through different books, and that's very helpful in trying to educate, because that way I can kind of stay focused and on topic. So right now we're reading Breaking Up with Sugar by Molly Carmel, and so that's really helpful in just, for one, looking at yourself. You don't even need to worry about trying to heal anybody else
Yeah.
until you really focus on yourself.
Uh,
And
so 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 Bitten was I was talking to Bitten this morning about something else, and she said it's like, on the aeroplane when they say put your own gas mask on before you help other members of the family. Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so, me, of course, identifying myself as a sugar addict, I know exactly what that is, because the first thing you want to do is to save everybody, you know and that's just not the approach. That's how I ended up being called a sugar preacher by my kids, and it just was ineffective. But then, as over time they see that, mom sure is handling this a little bit differently, a situation that I normally would have been upset about or probably mishandled, right, as a parent, they're noticing those differences. And then also, so that's the first piece for me, is just really taking care of myself. The
Yeah.
second part is really, any type of change, you have to act. It is a two-way process. There's no way. So that means I also have to get my kids engaged. Like, okay, I'm not ordering out. There's no Uber Eats or anything coming to this place this week. So what are you guys going to eat? So that means we have to go to the grocery store together. That means you guys will be cooking the meals. So, and I've got teens, so it
Yeah.
really is a lot easier to get them engaged into making their own meals.
Yeah.
Now, that may not be the sugar-free meals that I hope for, but those meals are better if they understand what's prepared. If being prepared is better than
And
not at
and
all,
how to cook, that's so
right?
important.
That's so true. And then I talk to them, and they know those standards. They know those standards. I love, piggybacking off of the American Heart Association. I'm like, those are the standards. You just should not have that much sugar in your body per day.
Yeah.
And so I love using those things and methods to teach, and it seems to be effective. I did have one of my daughters did say, there's no way that I'm ever going to drink a soda ever again. And then, and then one said that, well, at least we know your grandkids aren't going to drink sodas. And I was like, hey, that's
Hey,
huge. That's huge coming from a person who had 5 sodas daily,
that
you know.
that
So
is quite something, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah, it
definitely.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I think it's a slowly, and they. It was the same with our family that we did it first, got all the benefits, didn't push it on the rest of the guys. If they wanted rice, or whatever, we'd microwave some rice. I mean, I stopped obviously cooking cakes and stuff like that, but we didn't say they couldn't buy their own if they wanted it. But just slowly over time they found their own way, and that they felt better.
Yeah. That's
um and now the whole family, and like you say, the grandkids when you have them. So we've got four, and they're coming around tomorrow, and they come here and they eat what we eat, basically meat and vegetables and cheese sauce and stuff like that
yeah.
we've made. um really happy with that. So
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
happens slowly, and then friends and other people will say, what have you done? I mean, people must have asked you,
Oh
you've
yeah.
lost so much weight, how, wow, how did you do that? And then you
You
can
go down the sugar road. You have to go.
well, I'm
Yeah.
glad you asked.
Yes. How long
Well,
do you
how
have?
long have
Look.
you got? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's right. But another thing too, that was monumental for us is just, redefining celebrations. How does that look in a household where you're used to the cornbread dressing and you're used to, just the, candied yams, and all of that, redefining it. And it has shifted drastically. We're pretty much like seafood, it's going to be fish of some sort. You
yeah,
definitely gonna have a salad, so and just no carbs. We don't do the mac and cheese and all of that anymore. And so when you see that you can have a meal and you can be satisfied
yeah.
without having what you're traditionally fed or used to, then you're like, okay, I got this. We got it,
Do that. Yeah, I understand how to do it.
Mhm.
Do you have any? Do people ever have any concerns about the cost, or are you able to sort of explain to them, how you can do it on a budget, or the fact that you're saving money because you're not getting Uber Eats and all of that?
You know, um, I the cost part doesn't seem to be that big of a thing. I think for some people, access to
Mm,
the variety
the good,
is
the
what,
good,
yeah.
the shops that have the fresh food, and the yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that seems to be the bigger issue.
I would say.
But but I think too, just having a list is really helpful. Because at least if you've got that list, you know where to start. And if you don't have a list, and like I tell them, we go through Bitten's list, and I'm like, just highlight what you like.
Yeah.
This is not the time to try anything new.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not the time. So and plan to buy what you've highlighted, and that's it. And you prepare a meal based upon what you've highlighted you
Yeah.
know and that way people can kind of work their way into just better meal planning. So
Yeah.
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 And I think people are always delighted, aren't they, when you say, "Oh, you can have cream and you can have butter." It's like, "They're like,
Oh
what?"
yeah. Yeah. I thought it was fat free. No, no,
No, no.
please take the fat.
You can cook a nice meal with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fantastic. It's so optimistic. And on that note, I was going to ask you. We've got ourselves in such a mess, haven't we, with ultra processed food and sugar, and like you say, every celebration, and your own relatives. We all know people whose health is still suffering.
Yeah.
How optimistic are you that society is going to kind of wake up to this issue, and that it won't just be people like you and I and other people that we know kind of beavering away with our groups and trying to help people. Do you think it's going to become more widely accepted that sugar's bad for us?
I think it has already.
Yeah.
I'm really, I guess we have to really give a lot of credit to the keto community,
Yeah.
you know, in that at least people recognize that there was a window to where they felt great and they were doing better and they started losing weight, you
Hmm.
know. And when you look at that diet, you're saying, what is that? What is a keto diet? Well, you cut the sugar. And so I think that is a huge door for everyone to look at sugar,
Yeah.
including physicians, who are
Yeah.
running practices and people just in the communities on their own. They're looking at, diets and just saying, well, when I started eating my sweets again, then,
It
that's
didn't feel
what
so good. Yeah,
right,
exactly. I think
right.
I think I think you're right. Once people have given it a try and they've
Mhm.
had some success, I think you're on a winner. Then I think they may fall back, but as you say, they learn from that and then they they try again or they try and learn something new. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's that the keto low carb movement is growing.
Yeah, yeah, and especially when because you have to think about that movement as that it could be marketed.
Hmm.
People could go to the grocery store and look for something that was keto friendly, and so I think that is actually the thing that's opening the door for us.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
do.
yeah. Purchase the power.
Mhm.
So, on the end of your email, I notice it says life is too short to dot dot dot,
Yes,
and I wondered what
I like for
you
people to
say. What do
yeah,
you say to that, Sean? What's your life is too short for what?
I I'm gonna say to eat shitty food.
Yeah, that was my answer as well. I was thinking, what would I say? Life is too short to be in a sugar coma, isn't it?
Yeah, right, right. It's just too short to eat bad food. It really is,
Yeah,
and especially if you're gonna do it consistently. Just don't eat bad food consistently.
yeah, because you feel like rubbish, and also life will be even shorter.
Right, right,
You might be nice in the moment, but yeah,
right, right.
it's not good, not good in the long term. Yeah, definitely. So, what's next? You're just going to keep expanding the group. Have you got any other projects
Uh,
going on?
I really hope to develop a way for this community to sort of do what I've done. If we could do sort of a pilgrimage, a few women gathering together and just having the experience that I've had, but having it together and then having the dialogue together. I think it can open up doors to healing, and not just with communities of color, but just as a collective whole, because there's no way to not talk about the dynamics of race, the dynamics of tension, the dynamics of destruction. You have to talk about all of those when you talk about sugar.
Mm,
You have to talk about it. So I think as a human rights advocate, that's ultimately what I hope for everybody's to heal, in some way or another. So I think it would open up dialogue and when we experience things together. So
yeah,
we'll see. That's what I'm working on next. But yeah, just hoping to build up the community of just women of color, just talking about our health. And ultimately, I think that creates change for families because that's what happened to me. Had I not been
yeah,
seeking sugar education, there is no way that my husband or myself would have made changes. No way. So,
yeah. And that's the way it's going to spread. Yeah,
yeah.
you definitely need to write a book, by the way. No, you need to write a book on that history and that story because as you say, it's not being told, and you can self-publish like I did.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, then you have to tell me how.
we'll talk about that for sure. But I think that would, that's just, yeah, it's not known. It's that would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jen.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for coming on. I mean,
And tell Dr. Jen Unwin that I said hello
I
too.
will. I'll pass that on. I'll pass that on. I will. And I should have been wearing my. Everyone should know. I've also. It says sugar mode off. People won't be able to see what your T-shirt says, but it says sugar mode off. Can people buy sugar mode off T-shirts from anywhere?
Yes, the only unfortunate part is I have issues with shipping internationally, but if they
Ah,
could just send me, a message, something through Messenger or through my email, then I'll get it and I'll definitely have it shipped to you.
oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I'm sure you'll get some requests for sugar mode off T-shirts.
Yes.
Yeah, so thanks so much for being on, and
Thank you.
I really wish you all the best with this. It's vital, the work that you're doing.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah, so you're so welcome. Thank you so much,
Well,
and
thank you for the invitation. I'm honored. I really am, Jen.
thank you.
Okay.